Welcome back to another episode of Marvel Man 901. So today I'm going to talk about the Reavers, War Machine, Captain America, Avengers and Justice League. So I'm going to start off with the supervillain team known as the Reavers. So they were actually founded and led by Donald Pierce. They had their first appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue 229. Basically the whole thing about this team is that all of them are cyborgs, and actually the members are as follows: Donald Pierce, Lady Deathstrike, Pretty Boy, Bonebreaker, Reese, Cole, Macon, Skullbuster and Scylla. As they were introduced, the X-Men actually had to fight them because they were basically stealing things from a bank or something like that. Kind of a small thing. However, the X-Men actually defeated them and took over their Australian base or headquarters, actually using it as their Australian outback headquarters kind of thing. Later on, the Reavers actually returned to fight the X-Men, defeat them, and actually crucify Wolverine in an especially brutal way. Eventually, through Jubilee's help, the X-Men managed to defeat the Reavers once again and drive them off. The Reavers have fought many people over the years, not only the X-Men or Moira McTaggart and her alternate X-Men and whatnots, but also Freedom Force and Punisher and many more. Eventually, though, they had a pretty big setback as Trevor Fitzroy's Sentinels actually basically wiped the Reavers out almost completely. Only Lady Deathstrike and Scylla actually survived. Alright, so that's that about the Reavers. Now we're going to continue with War Machine issue 4 from 1994. So this continues from the previous issue when basically War Machine was in a civil war in Imaya, an African country. So basically he had joined the rebels to fight Ida Arul and his army. Eventually War Machine and the rebels basically managed to get into the headquarters where Ida Arul and S.H.I.E.L.D. actually were. Now the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents basically stood down as they realized that naturally Ida Arul was a bad guy, even though Imaya was part of the UN, which is why they were there. War Machine and the others basically managed to overthrow Ida Arul, and now there was a new ruler. Ida Arul tried to kill one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and War Machine killed him instead. Alright, so he actually realized that he had missed a certain point of this events, basically. So War Machine decided to go and check out on City Wayu, who actually was in basically lethal danger here, as the advisor and actually pretty much the master behind the whole civil war overall actually basically had him on gunpoint and actually killed Setuayo, and then basically left, leaving a hologram for War Machine to find. So probably more on this in later issues. Okay, so we're gonna go to Captain America now, issue 429. This is from 1994, and this is the 5th part of Fighting Chance. Basically 3 parts being connected into one here, as first of all Americop was basically still looking for these missing kids, and eventually some clues led into this kind of mansion. Now in this mansion, Diamondback and Moonhunter basically were being held captive by Gold Digger, Kono and Damon Dran. Now a little bit background information basically about Damon Dran. He was actually introduced in Daredevil issue 92 back in the 70s as the Indestructible Man, and he's basically indestructible still, I believe. I haven't actually heard anything of this guy since then, so it's pretty surprising actually to see him here. Basically why Diamondback and Moonhunter were in this mansion, basically being captive naturally. It was because Diamondback was looking for information on Snapdragon, a person that she believed she had actually drowned. Snapdragon had drowned Diamondback as well, so it's a bit of a revenge kind of thing, but they still kind of held a lot on her conscience. Why she was being held captive is because as she asked for information, naturally Kono, Snapdragon's brother, wanted to know why. Naturally it's a big fight between Snapdragon's brother and Diamondback, and eventually Diamondback almost actually drowns Kono as well. She kind of stops herself and then she's beaten unconscious. Now Captain America part is actually that he learns that Diamondback and Moonhunter are basically in trouble at this mansion thing, and he basically arrives to help them. So he fights Gold Digger and this strong guy inside, and then as he basically tries to find Diamondback overall, he actually meets Americop outside. Now first there's some conversation about basically them working together to find these missing kids and find out what the hell is going on in this mansion. Naturally Americop isn't actually into this, as he knows that Captain America is more of a good guy and they naturally fought before. Anyway, Damon Dran and Kono basically goes out with an unconscious Diamondback, and that ends that issue, which will be continuing the next one. So we're going to go to 1964 now with Avengers issue 5. First of all, the Lava Men are somewhat reintroduced here, as the Lava Men were basically introduced in Journey into Mystery issue 97 featuring Thor. But in this issue, they basically had been pushing a living stone up to the surface, basically, just to leaving this highly explosive stone for the surface dwellers to take care of. So naturally the Avengers were brought to the site, and they basically had to go underground to find out what the hell was going on. After Thor and the others learned this and fight the lava man a couple of times, they realized eventually that they can probably stop this living stone from actually exploding if they hit a certain vulnerable point on the top of the stone. However, the witch doctor of the lava man has some different ideas, and he basically somewhat defeats Thor, actually causes him to go to his more human side, the Donald Blake side, which makes him powerless in a way. While this happens, the Hulk actually turns up, basically sees the Avengers and goes angry, fights them, and as they don't actually have Thor's power now to actually break through the stone, they decide to use the Hulk's immense power basically to trick him into hitting this tiny little space, precisely little space actually, on the top of the living stone, which he did, and it basically caused the stone to, instead of exploding, it imploded. In a way, the Hulk is actually the hero of this story. Okay, so we're gonna go to DC's Justice League issue 117 from 1975. So this is a pretty tricky situation actually, as this villain called Equalizer basically spread some kind of equalizing spore all over Thanagar, where Hawkman was, naturally. So this spore basically caused everyone on the planet to be equal, well, which eventually actually caused them to be weaker, most of them anyway. At least Hawkman, as he obviously was a little bit stronger than the others before, but now he's naturally a lot weaker than he was previously. Hawkman actually decided to, the only way he could actually defeat the Equalizer and possibly save his people was to actually get the Justice League involved. But he had to trick them, as he was still basically infectious by this whole spore thing, which managed to basically infect people in a certain distance from him. So he kind of tricked the Justice League to get to Mars, where they would basically be infected by him as well, and all of their abilities, superhuman and non-superhuman, would actually basically be equal among all of them. He decided to fight the Equalizer, but was failing miserably, and the Justice League basically went to help him instead, or as well, and among all of them, they managed to actually get the Equalizer to leave the galaxy by basically sending out massive force of hate towards him, basically hating everything that he had done to them and all that, which actually somehow, in a weird way, kind of forced him to push out an equal opposite to this and basically leave. I don't exactly know how they actually thought that would make sense, but so a side note here in this end of this issue, where Hawkman, still of course knowing that Thanagar is still being basically infected by this spore, he knows that he can actually go there without actually being infected by this yet again, as naturally the Justice League was cured of this thing. So he basically had to remain with the Justice League for now. Okay, so that's it for today, for this episode. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you do like this, naturally share and subscribe and all this. All this is of course Marvel's and DC's creations. I'm only telling the story. So have a good day and stay safe.